The day I signed a $2 million contract, my mother texted me to ask if I was bringing extra folding chairs to Thanksgiving. That was it. That was the moment everything cracked open. Not with a fight, not with tears, not with any of the confrontations I had imagined over 14 years. Just my phone buzzing on my desk with a text about folding chairs, while a contract worth more than most people earn in a decade sat open on my screen. Two versions of my life, 30 seconds apart, finally in the same room. My name is Cole Langley. I'm 38 years old, and I own a commercial design firm called Meridian Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. 12 years ago, I started it from a folding table in a one-bedroom apartment with no clients, no staff, and exactly $4,000 in savings. Last year, we brought in $4.3 million in revenue. I have 22 employees, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Nashville, and a client list that includes hotel chains, corporate campuses, and commercial developments that show up in national trade publications. My family thought I drew floor plans for a living, not because I lied to them. Because every time I tried to tell them the truth, they were already looking somewhere else. This is the story of how the truth showed up at their Thanksgiving dinner without me, wearing an expensive blazer, carrying a signed contract, and sitting down at their table before anyone realized what was happening. If you're here right now, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Hit that like. It genuinely means more than I can say. Now let me tell you how it all unfolded. To understand that November, you need to understand what the previous 14 years had looked like from inside my parents' house. There were two versions of me, the one that existed in the world, the one with the office and the staff and the projects, and the one that existed inside my family, which was a completely different person. The family version showed up to holidays in the old truck, wore plain clothes, kept his phone face down when the project emails came through, and was generally useful in the ways the family needed him to be. He carried things. He fixed things. He arrived early and stayed late. He was, as his mother would say with genuine affection, so dependable. The other version, the one running a multi-million-dollar firm, had been kept completely separate. Not out of strategy, out of exhaustion. Every time I had tried to bridge the two worlds, it had cost me something I couldn't afford to keep spending. You share a milestone, and it lands like a polite shrug. You mention a publication feature, and your father changes the subject to your brother Ryan before you finish the sentence. After enough of that, you stop offering. You protect what you've built by keeping it away from the people most likely to look through it. The folding chairs text was the moment I understood that I had been agreeing every single holiday with the version of me my family had decided to keep. That Thanksgiving, I stopped agreeing. It had started in the fall of 2010. I was 24, fresh out of architecture school, with a portfolio of student work and a job market that had no particular interest in a new graduate. I was back in my childhood home in Nashville, applying to firms and running out of optimism at roughly equal speeds. My father, Robert, ran a mid-sized construction supply company, a man who measured professional success in annual revenues and handshakes at the Rotary Club, and who found abstract careers deeply suspicious. Architecture as a concept he respected. An unemployed architecture graduate sleeping in his spare room, he found considerably harder to work with. My brother Ryan was 22, 2 years into a business degree at the University of Tennessee, already being shaped for a role at my father's company. The path was clear to everyone in the house. Ryan was the future of Langley Construction Supply. I was the one who needed to figure something out. That first Thanksgiving, my mother didn't ask whether I would handle the setup. She announced it while standing in the kitchen, already mentally 3 steps ahead, the way she announced most things. Ryan had hurt his knee playing basketball. How a business school student managed a sports injury during finals week was never fully explained, and couldn't do the physical work. I had time. The logic was that clean. I spent the 2 days before the holiday getting the house ready. Furniture moved, rental tables set up, yard cleared. My father stood in the living room introducing Ryan to his business associate as the son with the head for numbers, the one who was going to do something with the family name. He glanced in my direction as I walked past with a tray of drinks and turned back without a word. It wasn't hostility. It was something quieter and harder to argue with, the simple absence of being seen. That was the first Thanksgiving. There were 13 more that looked almost exactly like it. At every family gathering after that, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, the 4th of July, birthday parties, anniversary dinners, the same geography applied. I was always in the setup or the cleanup or the hauling and carrying. Ryan was always at the table, being discussed, being introduced to contacts, being positioned for the next thing. The dynamic had established itself so early and so thoroughly that by the time I launched Meridian Studio in 2012, it ran on its own. I didn't have to do anything to trigger it. I just walked through the door and the task list appeared, usually already written out by my mother on a notepad in the kitchen. When I mentioned the studio to my father that first year, he was reviewing a supplier document and didn't look up. He said that was interesting and asked if I could check whether his fence posts had arrived from a contractor who had apparently gone quiet. That was the conversation about Meridian Studio. Neither he nor my mother nor Ryan asked about it again. So I stopped bringing it up, and the silence became the arrangement. For 12 years, I built Meridian Studio in complete silence around my family. My first major commission in 2014 was a boutique hotel lobby in Chattanooga, a project whose budget exceeded what my father's company earned in a quarter. I sat in my truck in my parents' driveway that Thanksgiving, having received the signed contract that morning, and thought seriously about telling them. I ran through the responses I would get. My father would ask about long-term stability. Ryan would make a joke that required a polite smile. My mother would mention something that needed doing in the yard. The conversation would end, with me feeling smaller than before I opened my mouth. I went inside. I moved the furniture. By 2018, Meridian had 15 employees and a second office in Atlanta. By 2022, we were designing interiors for national hotel groups and regional corporate campuses. A design trade publication ran a full feature on me the previous October. My photograph, my office, the Nashville skyline behind me, a description of Meridian as one of the most quietly influential commercial design firms in the Southeast. I had never shown it to my family because I already knew exactly how it would land. My mother would find something in the photograph to comment on. My father would redirect the conversation to Ryan's cue 3 numbers before I finished the second paragraph. When I came to family dinners, I drove the old truck instead of the Audi I'd bought the year before. I wore plain clothes. I gave vague answers about work and let my father redirect to Ryan, which happened reliably within 60 seconds, with the precision of a man who had been practicing the same pivot for a decade. Ryan had been at Langley Construction Supply for 12 years by then. He had a title that had been created specifically for him, Director of Business Development, and a salary that had been benchmarked to what my father felt the role was worth, which turned out to be quite a lot. He had not competed for the position. He had grown into a space that had been cleared and prepared and held open for him, which is its own kind of career preparation, though not the kind that leaves you ready for anything unexpected. The Thanksgiving, a year before the one that changed everything, had been the one where something finally cracked inside me. I had just closed a deal with a regional hotel group worth $600,000. I walked into my parents' house still carrying the specific energy of a significant professional win, and my mother handed me a printed schedule of pre-dinner tasks, 14 items, timed to the half hour. 22 people reported to me. 3 industry publications had featured our work that year. I had negotiated contracts with developers whose projects ran into the tens of millions. And there I was, reading a list of things to move from the garage. I took the list. I completed every item. I served drinks to 24 people while Ryan held court at the dinner table about his vision for expanding the company's regional operations, plans that were enthusiastically validated by our father, while I refilled ice in the kitchen. I could have mentioned that Meridian's revenue had grown 26% that year. There was no point. After dinner, loading the last of the folding tables back into the garage, I made a decision I couldn't name yet. I just knew that somewhere between the task list and the folding tables, 14 years had finally become enough. November 18th, 2024. I was reviewing material samples for a hotel renovation in Birmingham when James Kowalski came through the glass door of my office without waiting. In 8 years of working together, James had never once opened a door without knocking and receiving an answer, because James was the kind of person who understood that knocking mattered. When he came through without waiting, something significant was happening. He set his phone face up on my desk and stepped back. The email was from Catherine Aldridge, CEO of Whitmore Group, a real estate development and hospitality company with properties across 8 states, valued at approximately $4.2 billion. I read it twice to make sure I understood it correctly. Whitmore Group wanted to commission Meridian Studio for an exclusive design and architecture partnership covering all their new property openings through 2025 and 2026, a flagship hotel in Atlanta, a boutique coastal resort in South Carolina, 4 corporate office renovations, 2 residential tower common areas. They had reviewed our portfolio extensively, spoken with 3 of our existing clients, and examined our sustainability certifications. The proposed contract value was $2.4 million. I asked James if he had verified it. He had called Whitmore Group's legal department directly before bringing it to me. It was real. But there was a condition attached. Catherine Aldridge met every major partner in person before committing, and the only date she had available before leaving on a 2-month international trip was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the day my mother expected me at the house by noon. If we couldn't meet that Wednesday, the contract went to Pinnacle Design Group, a Charlotte firm that had been pursuing Whitmore Group aggressively for over a year. James didn't need to explain what that meant. Whitmore was the kind of client whose endorsement triggered referrals across their entire investor and developer network. Landing them meant entry into the southeast coastal markets we had been targeting for 3 years. Losing them to Pinnacle meant a question that no one would say out loud, but everyone in the industry would think. Catherine had also mentioned in the email that she had read the profile published about me in a design trade magazine the previous October. She described my approach to sustainable commercial design as exactly aligned with Whitmore Group's development philosophy. She said she was looking forward to meeting the designer behind Meridian. The designer behind Meridian, the person my family did not know existed. I told James to confirm the meeting for Wednesday morning. Then, against every clear-headed instinct I had developed in 12 years of running a business, I picked up the phone and called my mother. Because 14 years of conditioning does not dissolve in one good decision, the part of me that still hoped, that still thought maybe this time, that part picked up the phone. My mother answered immediately. Thanksgiving plans had grown. Kayla's, Ryan's wife's, colleagues were joining. 24 people total. She needed me at the house by noon on Wednesday for prep work because Ryan was coming in from a client trip and needed to rest before the dinner. I told her I had a business meeting that Wednesday morning that I couldn't reschedule. She laughed, a quick light sound, and said I could move whatever project I was working on. That family came first. I told her this was not something I could reschedule. She said couldn't or wouldn't, and I said both, and what followed was 14 years of everything compressed into 4 minutes. She said I was selfish, that I always chose myself over the people who loved me, that Ryan gave everything to this family, and I couldn't show up to help with one dinner. I told her I was taking the meeting. She could manage without me. She told me that if I chose a business appointment over my family on Thanksgiving, I should not expect a warm welcome when I came back. I said goodbye and ended the call. James was in the doorway. He had heard enough of my family calls over 8 years to understand what had just happened. He sat down across from me and said what I needed to hear, that in 8 years of working together, he had watched me undercharge clients and over-deliver results and build something extraordinary while treating it like a footnote around my family. He said the Wednesday meeting was the right call. He said it had always been the right call. I knew he was right. That didn't make the next part easier. Action 4. The plan. There is no clever strategy in what happened next. That is the part people always want. The plan, the calculated move, the moment where the underdog starts playing chess while everyone else plays checkers. The truth is simpler and stranger than that. There was no plan. There was just a Wednesday morning meeting and a decision to attend it, and a set of consequences that arrived entirely on their own. What I did do in the 3 days between that phone call and Thanksgiving was stop managing the story. For 12 years, I had managed what my family knew about me. I had driven the old truck. I had worn plain clothes. I had given vague answers to direct questions and let the conversation move wherever it moved. I had protected my professional life from their indifference the way you protect anything fragile, by keeping it out of reach. But that protection had a cost that I had been paying without quite understanding the amount. The cost was that I had no one in my family who actually knew me, the real version, not the one who moved furniture. I made 2 decisions in those 3 days. The first was to stop protecting what I had built from the people who should have known about it. Not to announce it. That would have required the speech I had never been able to find the words for. Just to stop hiding it. To let the truth occupy the space it had always deserved to occupy, without apology and without management. The second decision was to focus on the Wednesday meeting with the same clarity I brought to any significant project. I spent Tuesday evening reviewing Whitmore Group's development portfolio, reading their sustainability reports, preparing questions about their expansion timeline and design philosophy. I was ready by 10 o'clock, which meant I had 3 hours I normally would have spent thinking about what my family was doing instead of this. I used them to sleep. Wednesday morning arrived clear and cold. Nashville in late November has a particular quality. The light is flat and honest. The air has no humidity left in it, and everything looks exactly like what it is. I drove my Audi, not the old truck. I wore the gray blazer that had been hanging in my office closet for good meetings. I arrived at the Meridian conference room 40 minutes early and arranged the portfolio materials on the table myself, the way I had done for every significant client meeting for 12 years, because some habits are worth keeping, regardless of how many staff members you have available. Now, if this story is hitting close to home, if you've ever built something that the people closest to you couldn't see, please hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it means everything for this channel. Okay, back to Wednesday morning. Catherine Aldridge arrived exactly on time, which told me something immediately about how she operated. She was in her mid-50s, dressed with the specific understatement of someone who doesn't need to announce authority, because the room does it for her. She reviewed the portfolio with the focused attention of someone who had done this many times and knew exactly what she was looking for. She asked precise questions about our approach to sustainable materials in high-traffic commercial environments. She wanted to understand how we handled client relationships across long project timelines. She asked about our team structure and how we managed quality control across multiple simultaneous projects. The conversation ran 2.5 hours. That was 30 minutes longer than scheduled. At the end of it, she said Meridian was exactly the kind of firm she had been hoping to find. one where the founder's design philosophy was visible in every project, rather than diluted across a large, anonymous team. She said she would have her legal team send the formal agreement within the week. We shook hands at the door. She paused before leaving. She mentioned she had a dinner engagement that evening with a Nashville family she had recently connected with through a regional business network, a family named Langley. The specific quality of the pause that followed that sentence, the pause that happened inside me while my face stayed completely still, is something I have thought about several times since. My father had been working to attract investment interest for an expansion of Langley Construction Supply. He had apparently connected with Catherine through a regional business network. My mother had extended a dinner invitation. Catherine had accepted out of professional curiosity about the family. She mentioned that she had been told the Langley Thanksgiving was not to be missed, that the food was extraordinary. The food that I was supposed to have started preparing that morning. I kept my expression even and told her I hoped she had a wonderful evening. At the door, she paused again and asked if I had any connection to the Nashville Langleys, the family in construction supply. I told her it was a reasonably common name in Tennessee. She nodded and left. I sat alone in the conference room for a long time. The meeting had gone better than I had allowed myself to expect. But sitting there with the portfolio and the signed letter of intent and the certain knowledge of what was about to happen 20 miles away at my parents' house, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not even satisfaction. Just a very clean, very quiet clarity about the way the next 24 hours would unfold without any help from me. I drove to my hotel. I ordered dinner. I turned my phone off. For the first time in 14 years, I spent Thanksgiving Eve in complete peace. What happened at my parents' house that Thanksgiving? I reconstructed from an account given to me 2 days later by Donna Prescott, a family friend who had attended Langley Thanksgiving dinners for over a decade and who called me on Saturday to apologize for things she had witnessed and not questioned for years. At noon on Thanksgiving Day, my mother walked into her kitchen, expecting what she had expected for 14 years. A son already at work, burners going, the smell of a proper holiday meal taking shape. What she found was cold appliances, empty counters, and no coal. What followed was an hour of escalating crisis management. Every catering company in Nashville was booked or closed for the holiday, a fact that turns out to be extremely consistent across the catering industry on Thanksgiving, though it apparently came as a surprise. The grocery store's prepared food section had been cleared out by people who had planned further ahead. My father made calls to 3 restaurants, all of whom were unavailable. My mother's phone history from that afternoon, which Donna described to me with the particular precision of someone who had been watching it happen in real time, read like the contact list of someone who had just discovered that one person had been doing the work of an entire catering operation and was not replaceable by a single phone call. By 4 o'clock, when the first guests began arriving, the Langley Thanksgiving table held 2 pre-cooked rotisserie chickens from the grocery store, a bag of salad, a store-bought pie still in its plastic clamshell, and a cheese plate my father had assembled from whatever was in the refrigerator. There was nothing wrong with any of those items individually. Together, for a dinner 24 people had been invited to, they told a story that the room understood immediately. My mother's smile, Donna told me, had the particular quality of a structural element under strain, holding, but visibly. Catherine Aldridge arrived at 6:30. She moved through the room with the ease of someone who had walked into many unfamiliar situations and developed the habit of reading them quickly. She shook hands with my father, complimented my mother on the house, exchanged pleasantries with Ryan. My mother offered a brief explanation for the food situation using the phrase logistical complications, which was technically accurate and communicated nothing. Then Donna stopped scrolling her phone. She had found a post published earlier that afternoon. A photograph, Catherine Aldridge, and a man in a gray blazer, shaking hands in front of floor-to-ceiling windows with the Nashville skyline behind them. The caption announced that Whitmore Group was thrilled to formalize an exclusive design partnership with Meridian Studio and its founder, and linked to a design trade profile. Donna looked up and said, clearly enough for the cluster of people near her to hear, that the man in the photograph looked like Cole. The room changed. My mother stared at the screen. My father leaned forward. Catherine crossed the room and looked at the post, and her expression moved through recognition, then surprise, then what Donna described as a kind of delighted comprehension. The expression of someone who has just solved a puzzle they didn't know they were working on. Catherine told the room what the post confirmed. Meridian Studio was one of the most respected commercial design firms in the region, and she had spent 2.5 hours that morning reviewing their work before signing a contract valued at over $2 million. The figure settled into the room like something with physical weight. My father's face moved through several expressions in quick succession. $2 million was more than Langley Construction Supply's annual profit. Donna was already pulling up the design magazine profile on her phone. The full feature. My photograph. My office. My work. She read a line aloud. Guests were leaning over, passing phones, looking at a photograph of me that had existed in a national publication for a month, while every person in that room had assumed I spent my Wednesdays drawing floor plans. Ryan's expression, Donna told me, went through stages she didn't have precise words for. My mother stood in the center of her Thanksgiving and watched it come apart. She asked quietly why Cole had never said anything. Catherine answered with the gentle precision of someone who had been running organizations long enough to recognize a pattern when she encountered one. Perhaps, she said, because no one had thought to ask. The silence that followed was complete. My father's own business associate, a man who had been standing in that living room for years, while my father praised Ryan's quarterly numbers, stepped forward and said directly that he had no idea his friend's son ran a multi-million-dollar design firm and that he wished he had known. They could have discussed collaborations years earlier. My father had nothing to say to that. Catherine made the implications plain before she left. The woman they had apparently expected to spend her Wednesday in their kitchen was the same woman she had just commissioned for over $2 million of work. She now understood, clearly, why I had not mentioned the family connection when she had asked about it. She set down her glass of wine, untouched, Donna noted, thanked my parents for the invitation, said the evening had been genuinely instructive, and left. The front door closed. In my hotel room across the city, I was reading and eating the pasta I had ordered from room service. I had no idea that my family's social world was in the middle of reorganizing itself around a truth they had spent 14 years refusing to look at. The professional momentum from the Whitmore partnership arrived fast and kept building. Catherine's post was shared widely by the following morning. My inbox filled with inquiries from developers and hospitality groups I had been trying to connect with for 2 years. A design publication contacted James about an exclusive interview. 2 competing firms sent recruitment offers for senior roles, both of which I declined without spending much time on them. By the end of November, James had projected a 32% revenue increase for 2025 based on the Whitmore contract alone, not counting the secondary inquiries. He seemed almost unreasonably pleased about this for a man whose baseline expression was mild professional neutrality. The social consequence in Nashville moved differently, slower and more thorough. Donna Prescott posted something on her Facebook page the Friday after Thanksgiving. She didn't name anyone directly. She didn't need to. She wrote about learning at a family dinner she had attended for over a decade, that someone she had always known in the context of carrying things and fixing things and being generally useful had been running something extraordinary the entire time, while the people around him treated his work as though it didn't quite count. She wrote about how easy it is to accept the story someone else tells about a person without ever asking that person directly. The post gathered over 300 responses by Saturday morning. Several of them were pointed and specific. My mother's phone did not stop ringing that weekend. The women from her charity committee, her book club, her garden club, all calling with the particular thinly veiled curiosity of people who have received new information and want to confirm their understanding of it. She had allowed those groups to operate for years, under the impression that Cole was still figuring things out. That impression now required revision, publicly, and my mother did not enjoy public revision. My father's business associate, the man who had stood in that living room on Thanksgiving and said he wished he had known about Meridian, sent a formal email to my business address the following Monday. A project inquiry for a commercial development he was working on. He had found our website, reviewed the portfolio, and reached out directly. He did not go through my father. He didn't need to. My father was no longer the door you had to walk through to reach me. I responded with a project intake form within the hour. Ryan's situation was its own kind of reckoning. He had spent his entire adult life as the Langley son who was going to do something, introduced at dinners, praised at the table, positioned for the next thing. That identity had taken one Thanksgiving dinner to crack, and the crack was the kind that doesn't close. He sent me a text the following week that was 2 sentences long and managed to include neither an apology nor a question about my work. It was the most Ryan text I had ever received. I did not respond. Not out of anger. More because I didn't know yet what there was to say to someone who had been so certain they were the main character that they had never considered there might be other characters worth watching. On December 2nd, a letter arrived at my apartment by express mail, my father's handwriting. Careful, deliberate. The penmanship of a man who very rarely writes letters and had thought about every word. I almost didn't open it. He had spent 5 days since Thanksgiving trying to understand how he had missed what had been in front of him for 12 years. He had told himself he was a fair man. He had told himself he supported both his sons. The truth, he wrote, was that he had expected Ryan to succeed and had looked for evidence of that success and had expected me to struggle and found confirmation of that too, and had never examined the gap between what he expected and what was actually happening. He said he was wrong. He said he knew those words were not enough. He said he was saying them anyway, because not saying them felt worse. He said he didn't expect forgiveness. He said he wanted me to know he saw me now. I read it 3 times, set it on my kitchen counter, made coffee, stood at the window for a while. A letter did not undo 14 years. But it was a letter, and before that week, it was something I had never had. December arrived in Nashville with the mild winter the city usually gets, cool enough for good sweaters, warm enough for the Saturday farmer's market, the kind of weather that makes a person feel like decisions made in November might actually hold. On December 7th, I called my father. He answered on the first ring. I told him I was willing to try to build something different, but that different meant exactly that. Not me in the garage while Ryan sat at the table. Not my work treated as a curiosity while his was treated as a career. Not invisible in rooms where he was celebrated. I told him that if I came to family gatherings going forward, I came as a full member of the family. That I needed him to be genuinely curious about my life, to ask real questions and want the actual answers. That the version of the relationship that had existed for 14 years was not available anymore. He said that was fair. His voice had a roughness I hadn't heard in it before. The sound of someone saying something they had waited too long to say and knew it. The silence that followed carried 14 years of things that had never been exchanged between us. But for the first time, it didn't feel hostile. It felt like the particular exhaustion of two people who had been holding a version of something for so long that neither of them quite remembered how the original had looked. I told him I would come to Sunday dinner the following week, that I would come as a guest, that someone else could handle the cooking. The Italian place he had always liked was still open and did family-sized portions. He laughed. It was a short, real sound. I had not heard my father laugh in my direction in a very long time. After the call, I wrote out what I needed. Not a letter, not a dramatic declaration, just a clear document of terms the way I would write terms for any professional relationship that needed definition. I would attend family gatherings as a member of the family, not its unpaid maintenance staff. I would not make my work smaller to fit their comfort with it. I would be treated as an equal, or I would not show up. I would respond to genuine effort and ignore performances that substituted for it. My time had value. I would spend it accordingly. Simple rules, the kind I should have written 12 years earlier. My mother had sent 2 texts, careful surface-level messages that addressed nothing real and tested the air anyway. She was not ready. I had given her 14 years of patience at the kitchen sink. She could have whatever time she needed to find her way to this conversation. The door was not locked. It was just no longer standing open for everything. Ryan had been quiet. I didn't know yet what that silence meant. I was giving it time. Donna Prescott called to apologize for 12 years of Langley dinners, where she had watched me carry trays from the kitchen without once asking what I actually did. She said she was sorry. She said she had heard what Catherine said in that room, that I was one of the most impressive design professionals she had encountered, and that every person at that table had heard it too. She said my family had a great deal to account for, and that the people in their social circle were not going to let it go quietly. She also said something nobody in my family had said to me directly in 14 years. She said I had built something remarkable and deserved every piece of the success that had come from it. I sat with those words for a long time. They came from near a stranger, not from the voices I had spent years hoping to hear them from. And I understood, sitting with that waiting for those specific voices had been the most expensive habit I had ever maintained. December turned. The year wound down. On the last evening of it, I stood at my apartment window watching Nashville mark midnight with fireworks over the river, small and bright, reflecting in the water below, the way the city always celebrated itself with a kind of modest enthusiasm that felt exactly right for a place that had more going on than it usually advertised. James texted just after midnight. He said next year was going to be something else. I wrote back that it already was. I thought about Catherine Aldridge and what she had said before leaving my parents' house, that she now understood why I hadn't claimed the family connection when she had asked about it. That single sentence had done more in 30 seconds than anything I had managed to say in 14 years of careful silence inside that house. Not because it came from me, but because it came from someone my family measured in the currency they actually valued. That is the particular cost of being invisible to the people who are supposed to see you. They build a version of you early, before you have become yourself, and they maintain it, because revising it would require them to admit they were wrong. Some people find that admission more expensive than the truth. So you stay the background, you stay the yard work and the folding tables. And after enough years, you start to wonder, even against all the evidence, whether that version is somehow the real one. I had a Design Trade magazine feature. I had 22 employees. I had a $4.3 million studio. And I was still driving the old truck to their house and giving vague answers about what I was working on, because 14 years of being told that family came first had installed something in me that took longer to uninstall than I would have preferred to admit. What finally uninstalled it was not a speech, not a confrontation, not a carefully planned moment of revelation. What uninstalled it was a $2.4 million meeting on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and the simple act of choosing to attend it, of not moving the furniture one more time. I did not set out to teach anyone a lesson. I set out to sign a contract. The lesson arrived on its own, delivered by a woman who had read a magazine profile and decided I was worth 2.5 hours of her Wednesday morning. The same woman my parents had invited to Thanksgiving, expecting extraordinary food, and found instead 2 rotisserie chickens and a cheese plate assembled from whatever was in the refrigerator. Not bad chickens, just not the extraordinary Thanksgiving they had promised. Life occasionally arranges that kind of irony without any help. My father wrote a letter. He is trying, which is something he had not done before. Whether trying becomes something real will depend on choices he has not made yet. My mother is working through whatever she needs to work through. The door is not locked, but I am not standing at it. Ryan has been quiet. I am giving it time. Your success does not require their acknowledgement. It never did. It only requires you to stop waiting for it. Stop moving furniture for people who have never once asked what you built. And if this story found you at the right moment, if something in it landed where it needed to, I have another one waiting for you right now. A man who spent years being told he was the reliable one, the steady one, the one who could handle it, until the day the people who said it realized what it had cost him to carry all of that. The link is on your screen right now.